We'll go to former National Prime Minister Jim Bolger. Good morning, Mr. Bolger. Good evening, not quite morning yet. Good evening, Mr. Bolger.
Good evening.
We're nearly there, aren't we? Listen, what do you make of this result? Did you ever think get a majority?
Well, no, but then you asked me what I think of it. I think of my first election as an MP back in 1972 when we had the huge surge to the Norman Kirk-led Labour Party. That all came to an end in 3 years with a huge surge to the Muldoon-led National Party. So I've gone through a couple of these in my time. I mean, obviously the National Party were decimated in 2002 and so on. So big night for the Labour Party, big night for the Greens, and potentially a big night for the Maori Party, no question about that.
Do you put this all down to COVID, as some in the National Party have, that they were never able that things changed when COVID arrived? Or was there something deeper going on here?
Well, I think it's substantially COVID. I mean, go back a year and the two parties were polling approximately the same. And COVID came and the Prime Minister correctly was in front of the public on a constant basis. She wisely took the advice of her chief medical advisor and handled that very, very well. I don't think there's any debate on that at all. And that, of course, gave her the lift that was demonstrated even more so in tonight's poll. So I think it's certainly got a big COVID element in it. But I think the National Party has to look at themselves, ask the question as to what did they do that was right during the election campaign. Buying an argument with overweight people at the end wasn't a good idea. Just work out what worked, what didn't work, and more importantly, what are they going to sell for the future? It still upsets me that neither major party or even the small ones don't talk about the dramatic change that's going to happen in the workforce with artificial intelligence driving much of the machinery and the technology that we're going to have, and the dramatic impact that's going to have on the world of work, and nobody wants to talk about it.
The leadership, you mentioned the comments made about obesity from Judith Collins. What did you make of her leadership overall? She was handed a difficult task. What was your assessment?
She was handled a difficult task. She was very enthusiastic to have that role. Let's make that clear too. This wasn't a reluctant acceptance. I think overall she handled it well. I think she handled the debates well. I think some of her speeches weren't of the same quality as her debating skills.
Should she hold the job? Do you think that that's the right path forward for the National Party?
Oh, that's for the caucus to work out. And I don't think you'll see anything in that space for many, many months to come. You and the media will kind of speculate from tomorrow, but don't expect anything to move or change in that. I think one of the more interesting things in the National Party is whether the government now, with its huge majority, no Winston Peters to blame. I notice Winston got no thanks tonight for making them the government 3 years ago. And remember, the National Party by far the larger party 3 years ago, and Winston made the difference and put in a Labor government. He wasn't even personally mentioned tonight. He was pushed to one side, which I thought was a bit unfair. The other thing I think that we have to say is now there is no excuse for the Labor government not delivering on their policy commitments, so we'll see what happens.
It's interesting that you mentioned Winston Peters. You've had your history with Winston Peters over the years, but just give us your thoughts. This is pretty massive that he is out again. We don't know for sure that he's not going to try and come back again, but do you think he could have a role as an ambassador or something? Has he got more to offer?
I think Winston will probably, after tonight, decide. He's been at the front end of public life for quite a long time. And he'll quietly find something else to do. But who knows? You mentioned something. The government might decide to thank him for joining them and making them government 3 years ago by offering him an ambassador's post somewhere around the world. I think he handled his responsibilities as foreign minister very well. And so that wouldn't totally surprise me, but obviously I don't know what the thinking is inside the government.
Are you surprised to see so many seats, electorates across the country that have been rolled here for National? You know, strong rural seats, strong Conservative seats like Ilam and Christchurch?
Surprising, yes. and I don't have any instant answer for that. But very clearly there was a huge surge of early voting that went to the Labor or the Greens. But there are some seats that we lost the actual seat, which did surprise me considerably. And there will be a lot of soul searching within the National Party on that and why. But I hope this is a wake-up call for all parties to actually start to spell out what they're going to do. We now have massive debt. We had theoretical exercise on how that was going to be managed in the lead up to the election. I think most of that was theoretical and not realistic. So I hope now that we might have some substantive discussions on some of these huge issues.
Jim Bolger, really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much for that. Former Prime Minister Jim Bolger there.